Okay, and we're back for another episode of AlphaCast. I'm Mike Winter. I'm here as always with Dr. Bear Paul Lando up on the Smith River here in the great state of Jefferson on the border of California and Oregon. It's a gorgeous day in late August here in the summer of 2020. It's been quite a year, and we've been just having a blast up here at the farm, really expanding rapidly for you guys. Our signature crop, Jiao Gulan, has been doing very well. And we're embarking on a whole new project as we're kicking off Zone 2 in the permaculture farm, and we'll have more information of that coming. We actually have a GoFundMe coming. We're going to be seeking some support to launch a new initiative to get, like I said, the Zone 2 up with, which will include a Earthship type structure that will allow us to take the whole entire company and operation to the next level and really bring you guys a lot of amazing content, allow Bear to have his lab for his spagyrics and everything else he wants to do. We'll be able to do our podcast out of there. So a lot of exciting stuff coming your way. So just keep an eye out for that. And also we have a new a line of product coming out, our Lumen line. I know we've been talking about this for months. But it's been a lot of work to get it out and get it ready, and that is soon to launch, hopefully within a week here. So keep an eye out for that, and we'll have more information on that coming soon. I think Bear and I are going to do a whole little talk on that and launch that up on our website. So keep an eye out for that as well. In terms of today, really excited. This is going to be a really fun talk. We have Keone Hanalei on the show. He's here to share Hawaiian medicine knowledge from his ancient Kahuna lineage. Keone Hanalei is an alchemist, Hawaiian cultural practitioner, and founder of Pohala Botanicals in Kula, Maui, in Hawaii. Keone comes from a long line of medicine holders called Kahuna in Hawaii. His lineage hails from ancient times with pre-polynesian roots from the continent of Mu. Keone was entrusted with sacred knowledge from Hawaii and Mu, including Fern Medicine wisdom from his grandmother, who had a premonition that he would disclose the secrets to the world at a designated future time, maybe now. Traditional Kahuna understood man's emotions as supreme in living a balanced, harmonious life, and Keone will share how the spores of endemic and indigenous Hawaiian ferns hold such codes which correlate to specific human emotions, traits, and virtues. The potency of Fern medicine has been considered kapu, or forbidden, until recently when the kapu was lifted and all that was huna, or secret, could be disclosed. Keone has taken on his kuleana responsibility with great ha'ahehu. Sorry if I'm butchering that, guys. Sorry. And considers this the purpose of his life and the resolution of his ancestors. This episode is near and dear to the AlphaCast crew, so we're really happy to have Keone on today. Dr. Bear Lando, I'll let you take it from here, man, so I don't butcher any more Hawaiian. Jeez.
Hey, my Hawaiian is limited to Merry Christmas, Mele Kiliki Maka, and that's that's the extent of it. So I'm not that much ahead of you, even though I lived there for a long time. Hey, aloha, Keone, and thanks so much for being here. Boy, I'm really excited about this talk. There's so much I want to learn from you. You know, I was one of the early surfer invaders to your island long ago. We're surfing North Shore in Oahu, back in the 60s, and then moved to Fiji, and then from Fiji we decided to raise our kids in Maui, but that was old Maui, when we had the old airport before the jet port and everything there. So it was really sweet times. We had a long run there, and thank you so much for being here. So I don't know where to get started. Maybe with I want to get a little bit into Mu and who the original Hawaiians were, and get your understanding of that. We always talk about the Menehune and and long traditions that seems to be very real, because we had some experiences there that kind of proved that out. But also, just let's start with your name, Pohala, which is I love that name, really meaning ascend or just, to return back to consciousness. I don't know if I'm terming it right. So can you maybe go into the name of your company and maybe what that means to you?
Yeah, thank you so much. Mahalo, mahalo, both of you, brothers. I'm so happy to be here speaking with you. Thank you so much. Yes, Pohala, Hawaiian is a very poetic language. It's a very beautiful language. It's one of those languages that's actually meant to be sung. And within singing it, the enunciations can really determine what it means. And Pohala has always been a Hawaiian word that resonates greatly with me. And it means, as you said, to recover consciousness, to awake from stupor. Po would be considered something that might be seen as invalid. And then hala means to emerge or to awaken. And I feel like right now, there's an energy that's impacting this planet. It's impacting the consciousness, and it's an energy of disclosure. And of course, we know that disclosure can be very uncomfortable because this means the resurrection of our sacred memory. And it's not really compatible to the life that we've been living for a long time, that to which we have subscribed to for a long time. But the word itself, pohala, it's so comforting as a reminder that no one's immune to this field of disclosure. And for all of us to accept and to go gracefully into the resurrection of our sacred memory.
Wonderful. Yeah, and ascend means a lot of things to different people. And I was just delighted to kind of see that term used, in your definition of Pohala. So how about, can we get into the origins of Mu and maybe who the original Hawaiians really were? Because when I was there, I studied a bit into it, and the more recent Polynesian or Tahitian, inhabitants were actually predated by different people. So who were they?
Right, great question. And the Hawaiian people have really lived in this field of huna, of secrecy, where we've kept things in our families, a lot of the sacred knowledge and the sacred doctrines. So it hasn't been until recently that not just myself, but other ohana, now people are beginning to speak. And this is just part of how we're adapting our culture in order for the culture to survive. It has to adapt. It has to become contemporary. And part of that is me and other people speaking on these virtual platforms and things that are quite modern. So my lineage spans 1,017 generations. And this encompasses this encompasses 20,000 years. And you lived in Hawaii, you've been to Hawaii, Brother Mike. A lot of how we preserve our doctrines is orally through chant. And we preserve these chants, these doctrines, because we didn't have a written language, and that was purposeful. It's because for us, written language, anything that was written could be perceived erroneously. It could be translated erroneously. So we stored everything in our iwi kua mo'o, or our spinal cord. Now, within our spinal cord, that's what we would call the Akashic record. This thing, the Akashic record? To the ancient Hawaiians, that's the Akashic record, is the spinal cord. It's the DNA in the spinal cord, suspended in the cerebral spinal fluid, which is the human essential oil. Beautiful. So within our iwi kua mo'o, we hold all our chants. Now, my family, we have preserved our oli mo'o kuauhau, our family lineal chant in our spinal cord. Goes back 1,017 generations, 20,000 years. Here's the peculiar thing, is that when we go all the way to the founder of this lineage by the name of Mahat tells us a story that Mahat was located here in Hawaii, not Tahiti, not Rapa Nui, not Peru, but here. And more specifically in the what is known as Papahanamoku'akea, or the northwestern Hawaiian Islands, which are now underwater. So we're talking pre-flood.
Yep.
And the modern history books say that Hawaii wasn't inhabited until maybe 1,000 years ago, perhaps even 2,000 years ago. But if you talk to Native Hawaiians who are akamai or ma'a, aware of their oli mo'o kuauhau, their lineal chant, it will place us here 20,000 years ago.
Yeah, I mean, and there's ancient petroglyphs, right, on the Hawaiian Islands that you know, modern anthropologists don't understand, and I've been kind of really fascinated with this ancient history of Mu, and some confuse it with Lemuria. And God, what's his name? I read 20 years ago. James Churchward was a famous 20th century writer and explorer who came up with a lot of what we consider to be more common ideas of what Mu, they call the lost continent of Mu, which spanned across Pacific Ocean, that included all the Polynesian islands, Hawaii included. And it relates to a lot of ancient texts like the Emerald Tablets and the Book of Enoch. I mean, there's so much that really ties in all this ancient history that modern anthropologists, archaeologists, they just say it's all pseudoscience. But there seems to be a overlying narrative that's connecting all of this. And so just curious to know from kind of your insights from what you're discussing here with this really valuable knowledge that your ancestors have maintained, what is the tradition there? You're saying it's coming from the Hawaiian Islands, but does it connect a bit to, are you familiar with what I'm discussing in terms of, you know, the narrative is that there is a people that came, they were the original humans really, and then they spread out across the world and they came from this lost continent of Mu, or it could be an archipelago of islands as well, is kind of the idea. And it spanned across a lot of the Pacific Ocean. And then with the Great Flood, which we know is in many traditions, it was covered. So that makes a lot of sense too, that now, you know, that part of the island is underwater. And we've seen actually from satellite imagery, we can see under the ocean, this continent in many ways. So just looking for any more insights you have in all this, because this is just some of the most fascinating stuff. It's really important to know where we come from.
Yeah, and definitely we have ties to many places, not just around the Pacific, but all the way to Madagascar. And in that area of the Indian Ocean, Sri Lanka, Madagascar, the Maldives, it was known as Kumar. Mm-hmm. And that was an ancient sub-region of Mu, was Kumar. Now, it's interesting because we'll have similar plant species in Madagascar, all the way in Hawaii. How do you explain that?
Yeah.
How do you explain that? And you know, many people are familiar with what is called the Polynesian Triangle, which encompasses Hawaii, Tahiti, or Hawaii, New Zealand, and then Rapa Nui. But we also have a northern triangle. It's Hawaii, it's Haida Gwaii, and it's Hokkaido. Now, Haida Gwaii in Canada, the language, we have similar language. We have similar rituals. In Hokkaido, there's the Ainu people. There's an ancient people called the Ainu in Hokkaido, Japan. If you look at pictures of the Ainu and then you look at pictures of people in Hawaii and Haida Gwaii, we're like cousins. We look almost exactly alike.
That's amazing. Yeah. And, you know, we look at these megalithic structures too. That are still, there's remnants of them on a lot of these islands, these step pyramids and such. And it seems like, you know, and the theory is that these were the originators that ended up going, the original people that ended up going to Egypt. And, you know, there seems like there was some different types of technologies that we don't understand that, what I'm trying to get to is that these people weren't just, you know, the modern science likes to say that a lot of these ancient cultures were, you know, very relegated to traditional ideas of, you know, indigenous folks now that were just living in very simple ways, which is great, but didn't have this advanced technology that seems to make sense, that there was some sort of consciousness technology back then that was allowing them to do these things. And just curious if you have any insights into that, and then also related to the idea of the Anunnaki, or if there was any other kind of external factions that play with the Mu culture back then. Is there any legend of that within the context of your people?
Well, you know, like what you're saying is accurate, because the way it was taught to me was that the Mu were the first civilization. Now, something about the Mu that differs from us today greatly is the reason why they were so advanced and beautifully said the consciousness was advanced because there wasn't a need for exterior embellishments. Okay, the consciousness was so advanced that the embellishments were not needed. The way it was taught to me was that the first civilizations, they were so steeped and so ma'a because unlike us, they participated with gravity. They were not governed by it. And however you can ingest that and feel that, but it's very significant. They participated with gravity. They were not governed by it. Today, we're very governed by it. It's dense. Everything is the pressure. And therefore, we're very confined in our perceptions of reality and our perceptions of consciousness. Our ability for intimacy with one another is incredibly compromised because of this pressure, this density. However, they were not in that field of density. So they could access and resource different kind of dimensions, but yet make it relatable here. It was more choice-based.
Yeah, there are levels of science that we get into on our podcast quite a bit, and it really explains thoroughly the true nature of gravity and how your consciousness can interact with that in a whole different way and have a much different experience and not be in that pressurized, compressed data that we talk about. So it makes perfect sense to me. You know, back in the mid 90s or so, because of certain legal groups I was involved with, we were, you know, behind the scenes ferreting out, you know, how things really work in this system that seems to kind of keep us in a box. But because of our training, we were brought into certain factions with the Hawaiian sovereignty movement. And so I had a lot of great interactions, particularly with, you know, people, Native people in Oahu. So a friend of mine who's from a very old lineage, you know, much like yourself, he used to tell me just a lot of great things, you know, the under the ocean, you know, channels where people, you know, traditionally would walk from island to island through the lava tubes and things like that. But one thing that I really loved hearing about is how a lot of the Hawaiian language was very similar to words in Hebrew, and how the Hebrew language carried on certain codex from, you know, the Hawaiian tradition, and that became the basis of parts of the Bible. You know, I know you can discuss it a lot better than I can.
Wow.
You're right. And there's also similarities with the Berber language and with the Mayan language, with the Hawaiian. And I was really lucky because my grandmother taught me an ancient dialect of Hawaiian, which is the Mu dialect or Mu dialect. Now in Ainu, in Hokkaido, they've also preserved this language. But, and I'll just give you an example. Do you mind?
Please.
Of this language?
Oh, please.
Okay, so I'll just share with you a Mu prayer, one of the cornerstone prayers of Mu. Okay, Ikshe at naina ate apo, tekai mai la orihi o leva, ikshel harat mat ves, iho mai tawa leva leva, mere ra anui nui, et Hawait, et Haida, et Hokkaido, e lat no ko i lainta. Shiksi arat nawa, lakavai, amara, matari. Wow. And do you want the translation?
Please.
Okay. From the junction to fasten the hoop, the stars still stand in the upper space, and the transcendence remains wide and free. Coming is the dark cloud and the rainbow. At the point of Hawaii, of Haida, of Hokkaido, breaking away is the water in reverence of the Pleiades.
Whoa, crazy. And it does sound a little Hebrewic. And, you know, and I think it's Zachariah Sitchin who, you know, translated a lot of the stuff from Sumeria. he talks about the Hebrews and talks about these, you know, well, he doesn't talk, he's translating, and how there was these Martians that came down and they're the ones that disturbed it all and brought this lower consciousness that's led us to here. So, but anyways, that's really fascinating because you're tying it all together, and I think it's called the Nagamaya language, right, that connects some of this. And wow, that was amazing. It's really cool to see that we all, I mean, I guess the thing to take away here is we all come from the same place, really. We're all one. We're all one, you know, one family.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just, it's so inspiring to get more in touch with this, because a lot of modern anthropologists and stuff, they kind of delineate from that idea. And it's really cool. So in terms of connecting to the Fern medicine, that makes a lot of sense. So you think back in the days of the Mu continent, they were using this Fern medicine, and you've continued that tradition to today.
Yeah. Yes. And, you know, back, like I was saying, my lineage back 20,000 years, there's this figure, the founder, who goes by the name of Mahat. Now in each lineage of the 1017, we have a name, we have time, place, and then we also have a kiakahi, or a purpose. Why were they here? Why are they here? And Mahat's was Pua Ehu Ehu, or Fern medicine. So we know that this medicine is 20,000 years old. Now, Fern medicine, ferns, of course, they're a physiological medicine as well, a biological medicine. But the way that it was resourced with the ancestors was for emotional. It was emotional. Now, perhaps there's nowhere else ever, where we will experience emotions than here in what is known as the human event. So it's very unique. It's very critical in order for us to come here, complete our agreement, and then hala, as we say in the language, hala. Otherwise, we'll just repeat, because here's the thing about kiakahi, about purpose, about original agreement. It's quantum. It's not governed by time. So if it's not completed, we'll just repeat over and over and over until it is honored. So the emotions were seen as just paramount. The emotion, the human emotion, this is how my tutu, Kawiki Onalani, my grandmother, who raised me, by the way, Kawiki Onalani, and taught me the Ike, the knowledge. She said, boy, she always called me boy, boy, the power of the human emotion can create or collapse a universe, and that exists in you. Choose your thoughts wisely. Choose your words wisely. And so all this power that can be generated by the human emotion, look where we're in, brothers. We're in war. We're in a collective of war, and that is spun by the misuse and misunderstanding of the emotion. So, Fern medicine, Pua Ehu Ehu, is all about true recognition, integration, and expression of the human emotion, this very unique power of the human event. We have 103 native Hawaiian ferns that correlate to 103 human emotions, coded in the spores. Wow. Of the ferns, of these particular specific ferns, are the codes. For instance, I have right here, this is a fern called Ai, A-E, Ai. And this is the fern of empathy. So see the spores, the sori, and in that sori designs, there's the spores, holds the codes to empathy, true empathy. I have here, this is a really unique fern because people always think this is rosemary, but this is called Kalamoho Lauli'i. And within the spores of this fern are the codes to emotional innovation. How am I creating? How am I transferring this energy and creating something in form? How am I making contributions to my community? How am I making contributions to this collective? Another one, this one's really cool. This is Moa, M-O-A, Moa fern. And you can see the tips, there's the sori that holds the spores. And this is the fern of emotional purification. Clean house, clean house. This one was interesting because when my tutu, my grandmother taught me, you know, the principle, she says, imagine it's a broom. Clean house.
It's like Hawaiian sage.
Exactly. And I do make smudge sticks. These are all dried, by the way.
Nice.
I do make smudge sticks for myself and some of my friends. But now, of the 103 human emotions, the most common question I get is, what's the fern of love? That's the fern that I would like to work with. That's the medicine that I would like to ingest. And my answer to that's always pretty anticlimactic because there is no fern of love.
Wow.
But this is very purposeful because love is the culmination of all 103. Now, the energy of love in its totality is so colossal, it would collapse a world of form. This animate world cannot hold something so gigantic. So you and I, once we indoctrinate ourselves into 103 emotions, we graduate, evolve into the totality of love, and this world will collapse. That's called the completion of our agreement. And then we hala. The Tibetans have the same philosophy. They call it the rainbow light body. You honor the emotional experience and you ascend into color.
Wow. Yeah.
Fantastic. So on the emotional plane, how would you describe how they work? Do they have like the natural harmonics that coincide with, you know, perhaps those forces that would balance out the lower emotions?
Yes, and great question, brother. And I love the way you said it too. It's a harmonic. It realigns. And I'll give you a good example. So there's a fern called hina, and this is a fern of grief. Grief. Now, when I had this conversation with hina grief, asked me, what is your perception of grief? I said, it's loss. That's my perception of grief. And hina said, no, I'm not about loss. I'm about completions. I'm about completions. So it's all about realigning me with the true harmony, just as you said, the true harmony of that emotional quality. Once that becomes integrated into my physical body, it's practical, it's relatable, then I begin to express and exude that. Now I've become indoctrinated into that. I've no longer chosen to distort an emotion, and therefore the distortions leads to, like I was saying, where we are now as a collective in war culture.
Mm-hmm. And you know, as we were talking before we started this episode, I went to your website and I was delighted to see all your offerings, and I'm really eager to get some in the mail. I ordered yesterday. So what really intrigued me is you're using spagyric tincturing methods. Mm-hmm. So is that something that came from your traditions or something that you overlaid, you know, yourself? Did traditional Hawaiian medicine use similar techniques?
Yes, definitely. You know, Hawaiians are more known now, like for maceration techniques, maybe fermentation techniques, but the spagyric method, reducing something into its finest crystal form, the DNA of a plant, was honored and was actually seen as pretty fundamental in plant medicine. You know, the tiniest crystals of a reduced plant, that's its actual memory. That's its DNA, its memory. So it was necessary in order to properly revere a plant.
And I don't want you to give away any proprietary secrets, but you know, I do a lot of spagyric processing myself. So you go through a fermentation process, and then do you then distill that to make the alcohol for the macerate later on, or do you have a different way of going about it?
Yes. So the alcohol used for a lot of the medicine, I don't make it myself, but it's fermented noni, the noni fruit.
Oh, really? Okay.
The Hawaiian noni fruit. I like to remain as Hawaii-based as possible with all of the ingredients that goes with either the alchemy or the actual product. So yeah, and luckily and wonderfully for me, because also one of the spagyrics that I offer, I also infuse it with monatomic gold. And I have a wonderful resource from Moku'oke'awi, the Big Island, who resources that off the coast of the Big Island, the monatomic gold, the ormus. So I just like to stay in the Hawaii ohana, just within this area.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so you use ocean salt, sea salt from the islands.
Yeah.
Yeah, I do a process with Himalayan salt, but then I also collect from our spring water a little contraption that collects the ormus, and then we dehydrate it down and create the powder. And I worked with David Hudson right after he made his discovery back in '90. In fact, the first time I ever met him, we had him come over to Maui, and we had some local practitioners on the island, and we all got together with David Hudson, and that's when monatomic gold was, first introduced to the world. So yeah, good history, and our roots, are on Maui. There are a lot of good things happen.
Weren't the Anunnaki the ones that were going back to Mu? I mean, there's the whole story of that's right why they came here, right, to get the monatomic gold.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. The monatomic gold. Yeah, that's a potent superconductor. And I heard that the Anunnaki, it was for several reasons, for the atmosphere of their planet, and then also for the longevity of their physical avatar. So, and that would be aligned with me, makes sense with me, because of course it's such a powerful superconductor.
Yeah, absolutely. And our nervous system is supposed to be a superconductor, and we've lost that ability. And that's why I really like the ormus, because it retrains that natural innate tendency back in there. And then, you talk about the spinal cord, and I look at the spinal cord as different octave levels, and it's all about, raising the energy through the octaves, which is, I would consider, the ascension process. So if you don't mind, a little bit back to fern medicine. We live in the Northwest here, and I live in a fern forest, basically. They're growing all over the place. Do you know anything about the native ferns on the mainland here?
I get this question so much. So I'm versed in native Hawaiian ferns, and that's where I feel more comfortable, and it's more responsible of me to speak just of the native Hawaiian ferns. But ferns are all related, of course. So when people send me pictures, I just say, if you ever send me pictures, make sure you send me pictures of the underside. I need to see the sori design. I need to see their spore, the design of their spores. And that would allow me to just relate it to what it's most closely resembles or related to of the native Hawaiian ferns. There are several that are really global, like the maidenhair fern, which we call pa'iwa iwa here. Of course, that's found everywhere. It's the fern of emotional truth. And this fern and this principle is incredibly poignant today, because as I was saying, we're in a field of disclosure right now. Regardless if it's very uncomfortable for you or you're welcoming it, it's here. It's arrived. Disclosure is here. And so this fern, the quality of emotional truth. What is emotional truth? What is truth as an emotion? It's my memory of original agreement. And I could be in revolt of that, because I'm going to tell you what, when I went into and discovered the template of my original agreement, it had nothing to do with all the identities that I've created and built, and I present it to the world. So identity crisis, right? So it's very uncomfortable, this field of truth that we're all in, but no one's immune. We can go gracefully. And this is what my grandmother, Tutu Kawiki Onalani, always said. She says, boy, you have two choices. When we come into disclosure, one, go in grace. Just go in grace. Or two, you will have to be activated by way of immense trauma. Because as we know, trauma is also an activator. But she says, we live in free will. Just choose grace. Whatever you choose, it's neither right nor wrong, but grace will be less destructive for you and your community.
I really believe addressing the emotional plane is all we have to do. But of course, in my field, people come in because they have physical maladies and, biological issues. But I see those emotions just holographically playing out with the nervous system as a mediator into the organs and creating symptoms that then, we doctor types look at as disease, which I don't think is really disease. But can you just elaborate on any of your tinctures or any of the fern species on a biological level and effects they might have there?
Yeah, like for instance, I showed you Moa. Okay, now this fern biologically is also a powerful diuretic. And of course, it's emotional purification. So a lot of the times, its biological component or how it assists biologically will align. Like there's one, a fern called Makali'i fern, and this is a fern of emotional euphoria. And it can also be a very subtle psychedelic. So a lot of them, their emotional quality will relate to how they also work with the physical body on a biological level as well.
Fantastic.
Interesting. And what's the idea with these, what's your concept or your people's concept where these ferns came from? Is that, do you guys have a tradition of a mother Gaia, or is this our own consciousness working with the planet to originally create these on Mu? What's the tradition say there?
Okay, so I want to kind of backtrack and to explain why. Why do ferns hold emotions? Like, where did this come from? So I'm sure many of you are aware of yugas, different cycles. We have been in what is considered a dark age or an iron age, a Kali Yuga, for a very long time. Now, fossils are traced back 360 million years. As far as plants go, it's very significant. And as far back as 180 million years ago, the fossils of certain ferns are identical to ferns today. This tells us that they have gone through what is known as evolutionary stasis. They've met their evolutionary ceiling. What's so significant about an entity who has achieved evolutionary stasis means that they are no longer required to accumulate data. Now, not all data is knowledge. Not all data is quality. So they are immune to corruption, energetic, spiritual, mental, emotional corruption. So when we as a species went into this Kali Yuga, we transitioned from a golden age into the Kali Yuga. There's a lot of commotion. The human emotion is so precious. It's possibly the kiakahi, the purpose of this consciousness right now of the human event. How do we preserve it to ensure it doesn't become corrupted during a Kali Yuga? So because the ferns have achieved evolutionary stasis, they volunteered. They said, we'll hold the codes of human emotions. Through the Kali Yuga, we can't become corrupted. They'll be preserved until the time is hemolele, as we say in the language, perfect. Until the time is hemolele, to be gifted back to the humans for integration, expression. And I always say, the fact that you and I are having this conversation now means the time is hemolele. The time
Absolutely. Yeah, we're definitely all finding each other. Just on a personal level, certain events that led me to Hawaii and raising my family there were very significant. And both my wife and myself believe that we went through a great purification living there. In fact, we landed out in Kipahulu there, and a friend of ours who grew up in the area where your grandmother was from, Samakai, he he said, well, you know, you're not supposed to be living here in this particular place where we were at. He said the Kahuna used this for purification rituals. And he said, this is way too intense to live here full time. And, you know, sure enough, we went through the fire. You know, Pele was alive and well in our energetic fields out there. So, but my question is, because Hawaii was such a special place and still is to us, even though we're not native to there, I just feel that it plays a significant role in the larger global unfolding. So can you share anything about the role of Hawaii for all of us?
Thank you. Thank you for asking that, because this is really important, because so many people are coming to Hawaii, even just to make contact. Don't know why. All their money just to come here, make contact with the aina, the lepo, the land, and then go back. Like, it's very mysterious. My grandmother told me, she says, Ko Hawaii pai aina, the island will call her children home. Well, and just as you're saying, like when you came, you had this experience, I feel like this is a portal of activation. And of course, because it is one of the most preserved remnants of Mu, it still has that energy intact. And like Ispra, especially Maui and Kauai, you go to Kauai, the tendency is to float away on Kauai. It is so otherworldly. Really? They have preserved that energy. It's a temple. The whole island's a temple. Every time I go, major activation and memory. Now remember, memory is going to come through. It's what you're going to do with that memory. Are you going to reject it? That's the main story with many people. It's too uncomfortable, I'm rejecting it. Or am I going to receive it, resource it as a tool, and complete my agreement? So brother, I feel you on this. And my grandmother even told me of this. She says, Hawaii will call her children home. Come here, make contact. Activate, not just yourself, but activate this portal. We call it Leina. It's a Leina. It's a wormhole. It's a portal. And it's not just Hawaii, but it's because Hawaii is so preserved, it's intact.
And many liken the Hawaiian Islands to the chakra system, of course, where Kauai is the crown chakra, which makes sense. You have that experience. Now, we used to vacation in Kauai. That was the place where we used to go to get away from it. And, it was exactly that experience. I wide surf in Hanalei and out in tunnels at the end of the island there. But boy, I just remember so many times just sitting there and feeling otherworldly. And then Maui, the heart center. And then it also makes sense. The lowest island, the big island is the root chakra with the fire. So, you could probably elaborate on that a little better.
Yeah, and Oahu, the throat. Look for all the commerce, the industry. Wow. Everything occurs on Oahu, the throat, and definitely, Haleakala, the whole crater of Haleakala, we say that's the pu'uvai, that's the heart. And you hike into Haleakala crater, you have heart expansive experiences. Your tendencies to welcome and to honor intimacy in that crater. That's why I know a lot of the ancient people would go in there to do ceremony of intimacy, to reaffirm intimacy within the crater of Haleakala. And yes, the Moku'oke'awe, the big island, the sacral and the root. It's explosive. It's explosive. It's the generation. It's the anticipus of our experience here. So most certainly, and the crown chakra, the third eye on Kauai, certainly. And there's Leina, there's a stargate on Kauai called Kalalea in Anahola, and it's interesting because this was considered kind of kapu. No one talked about it. Only in Hawaiian families did we know this certain spot has been wide open, never shut. And the Dalai Lama was on Kauai, and they're in a car, and he asked them to stop. And he stood in front of there and he says, that's where they come in and out. And then the Hawaiian people were like, that's our Lena, that's our Lena.
Wow. Are the islands on ley lines? You know, the electrical fields of the planet, do you know, they fit on a ley line and connect to the pyramids? Has it done research on that?
I mean, I've seen, I'm not sure, because the only ones that I've known are these ley lines that go through Rapa Nui to Easter Island.
Yeah.
But in a sense too, because people have questioned that, and I said, it's perhaps that's what has kept it so preserved. It's been so inconspicuous, these islands on so many different levels. It's as if the entire island chain has been in a moratorium for a very long time, in a hibernation for a very long time, completely independent of all the activity that's been going on around.
It really is the Garden of Eden there when you go there, and it gives you, if it's symbolic of where we came from, man, it'd be nice to all go back there, huh? Because if it represents the consciousness, the physical plane of Hawaii being so lush and full of abundance, and just when you go there, right when you step off the plane, you can't help but smile and feel amazing, right? Yeah. And at least when I go there, and if that's, that's where we all came from, this lush Garden of Eden of just abundance and beauty, that is something to really inspire people. And that's what brings people there. It literally is paradise there. And it's something I think if we can all as humanity hold in our heart and look to Hawaii as that symbolic formulation of where we should be consciously every day and wake up and feel that Hawaiian spirit, I think the world would transform overnight into a place of love and majesty and peace.
Yeah, Brother Mike. What Hawaii teaches us, and it's fundamental, it's super simple, but what Hawaii teaches us is how to be touched by life. Mm-hmm. It's as simple as that. This is what the natural world, what nature teaches us. Humans, remember. Yeah. Be touched by life. Forgo the projections, the analytical, the methodical, the embellishments. Just be touched by life. My mentor is Leonardo da Vinci. Ever since I was a kid, Leonardo da Vinci. And the greatest thing he ever taught me, it's one of his quotes actually, is simplicity is the ultimate sophistication.
Beautiful.
Leonardo da Vinci happens to be one of our mentors as well. I was in the pioneering circles of something called clinical kinesiology, and our symbol was his canon of man, and the arm positions and everything. So what we did is we had people hooked up with EEGs and all this sort of thing in our research centers for a long time. And when we put people in those exact positions with the exact ankle rotation, degrees of ankle rotation, or arm positions on EEG, you'd see the same exact frequency readout on everybody. So Leonardo was definitely tapped into the electronic nature of the universe and man, for sure. My experience in Hawaii is that it was much easier to get in touch there. The veils were much more thin than the mainland. In fact, people might think I'm crazy, but where we lived out in Kipahulu, there's a river, a creek that came down, and a waterfall that we'd go at the end of the day and take our showers there. And as you're walking up there, you could very audibly hear voices. Mm-hmm. And which locals there said, well, those are the ancestors in the area. So am I nuts, or was I really hearing things?
No, you're really hearing things. I go in nature every day, and I always hear subtle chanting. I always hear subtle chanting. And for me, oftentimes it's encouragement. Sometimes it's a lesson. It's just about me dropping in and receiving it and integrating it. Of course, offering my consent to do so. And it's very much alive. And like you're saying, the veils are so thin. It's really amazing.
Absolutely.
So we're moving towards, we're seeing kind of these divergent paths where folks like us are really embracing these ancient technologies, like the Fern Medicine, spagyrics that bears into. And then you're seeing also on the mainstream news, this transhumanistic push, a push for more and more digital technology. Now people are working remote from home. How do we, what in your mind is, where can we go here? Because it seems like there's these divergent paths away from nature. And as we're saying, Hawaii is really reminding us that we are nature and we need to get back in touch with nature. But then we've got this sci-fi world that's breaking off, that's really pulling us away more and more. And we're seeing the effects right now. We're seeing everything's breaking, everything's collapsing, everything's failing on that. What in your mind, what could you tell our audience to inspire them, how we can move forward here and bring these worlds together? Or are we just, do we need to totally leave that world? What is your solution?
Well, nature is so sophisticated. Just like I was saying, the original civilizations, they didn't need embellishments because nature provided. And here's my thing, and here's my recommendation, is that I understand, and for a large part, I really appreciate our advancements. But there's a really important component that has been missing and still missing, and that's called consent. We haven't asked the consent of nature and the natural world. We've sort of went rogue. And in the doctrines, and not just the Mu doctrines, but this is the doctrines of the Navajo and the Zuni. It says this signals our complete split from nature and then our transfer into a machine. We see transhumanism as a topic right now. And for some people, they think this is the only way for the survival of our species is transhumanism. But all this talk and everything that's going on, we haven't even approached nature and asked consent. That's kind of staggering. I mean, we're alchemists. We work with the plant world, so maybe it's staggering to us because we see how critical and important and how elegant. One of the illnesses, aside from amnesia of the human event, is our need to seek alternatives. Always, always, always. It's never good enough. Seek alternatives. Now, I look at nature, I look at the trees, I look at the flowers, and I see how content they are. A hurricane is swirling. They're content. A weed is growing out of cement. It's content. It has learned not to seek alternatives, but to resource the tools of its immediate environment and see that as plenty. It's enough. And I feel like this is where we need to reconnect with nature, and we need to reaffirm and honor it with asking its consent. Bringing nature into the dialogue. This is how we as humans perceive evolution. This is how we can adapt to certain things. This is how we can evolve as a consciousness. So let's bring in nature. Let's ask nature its consent. I feel like that's the missing link.
And you could almost say
that.
Oh, go ahead.
I was just going to say it's that separation that has created this, what should be intuitive. We raise medicinal herbs here. We, gather things we wildcraft in the forest around us. And it's just intuitive that you communicate and ask permission. It's not something that you have to read about or learn. It's just, you just naturally do it. What's really encouraging to me, though, is many people are really craving to reconnect. We have people every single week asking if they can come just hang out, work in the gardens. And so, I see just a natural, evolution back full circle to that.
Yeah, so do I. I've been feeling that and seeing that myself as people's natural pull to return to nature. And once we return to nature, then clairvoyance, then telepathy, everything that we have, we need technology to replace that with, And see, this is why nature is going to teach us all these things. And once again, like the first civilizations, the Mu, will see like, wow, all these embellishments were really not needed. They just really complicated everything.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think, go ahead, Mike. Sorry.
I was just going to say one thing. I think the other thing that relates to that is gratitude, right?
Yeah.
Because if people could just embrace gratitude more and just be so happy, that's what that weed and everything, they have embedded within them gratitude for existing and being part of this beautiful matrix of nature and of the universe. So I was just going to throw that in.
I love that.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, brother, but I just wanted to say my grandmother, one thing she always told me is, she says, the only requirement for abundance is gratitude.
Amen.
Absolutely. I was just going to comment, you brought up telepathy. I believe telepathy is not a natural condition in today's day and age because we think we have secrets. And so we put up these blocks so that we can't be telepathic with each other. But when you're out in nature, there are no secrets.
Right. Right. In nature, there's not only no secrets, there's no shame. There's no shame. And that's why we as human beings, we conceal, we hide ourselves, because whatever I'm feeling, somehow it's not compatible to this narrative. Actually, it's a violation. My truth is a violation. So there's incredible shame. But just as you're saying, brother, you go into nature, shame just collapses. You're being completely embraced for the organic entity that you are. It's freeing. It's like amazingly freeing.
Yeah. I could see a future where we go back to organic analog technologies, where we still can push the envelope of innovation and connect more, but it's through our own. We, as Bear likes to say a lot, we are the greatest technology. We are far more advanced than any nanotech or any crazy hadron collider or whatever. We right here have the power. Yeah. And we can tap into our psychic abilities. We can teleport. We can, do all this amazing things like they were doing on the continent of Mu back in the day, making these megalithic structures and everything. And this reality has been hijacked by those who, whether they're Martians or whatever, the service to self entities or whatnot. But the awakening is happening, and I really feel, and it seems like what you're saying too, is we are crossing over into that new age, whether people like it or not. And I just I hold this vision of these beautiful, going back to cities where we have crystalline structures and sound bath harmonics healing us, and huge fern forests we walk through and resonate with the plant life. And we can be in nature and still be massively evolved and technological.
Yeah, Mike, yes. It's just about us being responsible with our innovation. What's the goal? Why are we innovating to begin with? I think a lot of people have no idea. You stop someone and say, why are we innovating? What's the goal? Mm-hmm. I don't know. Right, that's the problem.
to have cool stuff. I mean, it is fun to have gadgets and stuff and explore things and and connect. But once again, it's a hijacking. Like people like their iPhone because they on social media can have, it really has made the world closer. And there's been a lot of powerful innovation with that, right? But what if we were all psychic? That would right. Go up. This is Stone Age. This is Stone Age technology compared to that.
Right. Yeah.
But Bear said it right too. He talks about we have a lot to hide. We have shame. It goes back to the Garden of Eden parable, that we became aware that we were naked. And, there's going to take a lot of personal consciousness growth of all of us. Each person has to has to grow up and has to start taking more responsibility for their own spiritual connection. We're spiritually bankrupt right now, especially in the United States. We're seeing it right now. And it's really sad. I saw that poor fellow commit suicide and they got blamed on the police or whatnot. That happened, I think, over the weekend. And my heart just broke for that person, that man who would just go kill himself in public like that, because just the materialism and the consumerism and stuff is just really depleted that connection to spirit. And man, I get choked up thinking about it, to be honest, because it's really sad how lost so many people are. And it's like, if we could just turn that around and just get reconnected, if everybody could take a trip to Hawaii, but not all at once, just once in their lives, and get connected to that spirit, man, we could turn this world around really quick.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah.
So, Keone, we're coming up on the hour here. I could talk to you all day and have a ton of things I'd like to pick your brain about, but can you, do you have anything you'd like to discuss or bring up that we haven't talked about?
You know, I just want to, like what Brother Mike was talking about, and, you know, we're coming into our power, we're becoming activated. Original agreement is being disclosed to us, whether that's uncomfortable or not. And, you know, I mean, we can talk an hour about that, and, you know, how we can have compassion and empathy for our brothers and our sisters. But my overlying theme about that is just to remember to keep things simple. It's the overwhelm that takes us into agitation and violence and aggression and dissociation. If we can just keep things as simple as possible. And, you know, my grandmother said, when you come into this memory, the disclosure of your memory, she says, there's 2 steps to it. One, it's going to be the hardest one, and that's to say it. Expose yourself. Be seen and heard. Say it. It's going to be a violation. You're going to be challenged. You're going to be scrutinized. You're going to be condemned. You're going to be rejected. But there's something that's more powerful than all of that, and that's inspiration. You're also going to inspire.
Amen.
So show up and speak. And then the second step, which is also necessary, it's going to come a lot easier because you've already empowered yourself, and that's to show it, embody it. So Tutu would say, boy, tell us who you are, and then show us. Let's see results.
Wow.
And what brilliant advice, because we live in a time where everybody's afraid to speak their mind.
Yep.
And you could say that's by design in some ways, but either way, that is powerful and so apropos for right now, as Bear said. And yeah, man, do you have maybe a parting prayer for us? I know, I mean, you've done one already, but it's so powerful. I really felt that energetically when you did it, and it's just maybe that's something we can end with.
Oh, I would love to. I would love to do a mu prayer of empowerment. So, brothers, in tradition, we have a position called kulike, and this is the ancient greeting of the mu, okay? Now, we know that any statues found in Peru or even in Taiwan, we know they're mu delegates because the statues will actually be in this position. So our right hand, which is our masculine, okay? This is our brother. We're going to bring him home to his throne, that of the heart space. Mm-hmm. Here in the heart space, the mantra of our kane, the masculine, is pa vale pu'uvai, and that means open your heart wider. The brother needs to learn how to open his heart. He needs to learn to be vulnerable. He needs to learn to ask for help. Now, our left hand, this is our feminine, okay? Our feminine, we place it all the way in the womb space, okay? The sacral area right here. Mm-hmm. Here, the mantra of the feminine is ua malu, I am safe. The feminine needs to feel safe. She's not going to disclose unless she feels safe. So this is called kulike position. This is the most ancient greeting. You see statues, some found in Rapa Nui, in Pumapunku, and the statues that are in this position, we know they're mu. So now the prayer, I'm going to say it in mu dialect, and then I'll translate it. Ka eka tawia mea it on parat u la mea amma kui heva ma ach amma. To be entangled in that which is unnatural. Now I rise. exposed and brilliant, finally. And to penetrate an illusion, finally, finally. Aloha.
Mahalo.
Mahalo.
Thank you so much. And as you say, everyone's waking up to their memories of who they really are right now. I think that's what we're seeing. And all this destruction and mayhem is people coming to grips with that. And exciting times indeed.
Exciting times, and friends, go in grace. Go in grace. We're all in this together. Let's just go in grace.
Beautiful. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Oh.
Bear, any parting words for our guest or?
No, I don't want to interrupt the feeling we have going here right now. So thank you so much for being here, and give Mother Maui a big hug for me.
I certainly will. Mahalo, brothers.
Mahalo.
Mahalo.
I hope everybody listening has enjoyed this as much as I have and we have. Truly inspiring. And if you did enjoy this and you're new to our community, you can find everything you need to know about Alpha Vedic at alphavedic.com. It has all our links there for our AlphaCast. You can just go to link there and see all the shows we've had. You can also join us on Telegram at t.me/AlphaVedic and Discord at alphavedic.com/Discord, DISCORD. That's where our communities reside online. Until we get psychically connected, that's where we're at. So join us there, and go ahead, Bear.
Mike, sorry to interrupt there, but Keone, can you tell us how we can best get a hold of you?
Oh, sure.
If, that's okay.
And of course, those links will be in the show notes too.
Yeah, on my website, I have a lot of great information on my website, pohala.net, POHALA.net. I'm always throwing down some ike, some knowledge on my Instagram. Lots of things there to resource as well. That's Pohala_Hawaiian_Botanicals.
Wonderful. Yeah, I put those in the chat here from the get-go, and they'll be in the show notes, of course. So please go support Keone. As Bear was saying, he's got amazing products, and let's support this brother because he's doing amazing work. So thank you so much, guys. Have a beautiful day. Get outside, get into nature, go grow something, go on a hike, do whatever you can to ground yourself and have gratitude for this life. Thanks. Mahalo.